Welcome to the Bet On Me podcast, the ultimate resource for softball players looking to take control of their training and reach their full potential. I'm your host, Krista Stoker, and on this show, we'll be discussing everything from taking a holistic approach to your training to data-driven strategies for maximizing and growing yourself, not only on the field, but off. We believe that athletes should lead their own journey and push past any perceived ceilings on their talent. So join us as we explore the world of softball player development and help you bet on yourself. Because when you bet on yourself, you can't lose. All right, so we're back for another episode of the Bet on Me podcast, and I have Ryker, who has been on the show before, but is in slightly a different context this time. So we're super excited to chat a little bit today about Rykers Journey lately and how it ended up with us. So we're just going to kick off, maybe, Ryker, if you can tell everyone. I think a lot of people sort of like generally know that you were coaching in college and some of the path, but maybe just walk through a little bit more around how you got into coaching, what that journey just generally looked like for you.
Yeah. So I grew up in a really, really small rural area in North Florida, but basically lower Alabama, right there where they all come together. And growing up, I played multiple sports, but my dad coached softball and my sisters played. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I tell everybody all the time, I was like the annoying little brother at the back of the dugout, just like mocking all the girls in my sister's team and like trying to be better than them. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then started playing a little bit of like men's fast, which I was just like at early ages, I was just like throwing. And then I got into like actually pitching. And then my sophomore year of high school, I flew to Chula Vista, California to the Olympic Training Center out there and tried out for the USA Junior Men's National Team. I made the team there. That was in 2013. And so made the USA Junior team, was on there for 4 years. And then actually right out of high school, went to a year at South Georgia State College. And originally was just gonna I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then I'd known the coach there, Nikki Lebring, for a little while. And she was like, why don't you come help us out? And the next thing I know, I was 18 and I was in every bullpen running it by myself and calling every pitch of every game. And actually we had 4 pitchers. One was a freshman. We were in class together. And the other 3 were sophomores that had already been there. So, but I had a great year that year. And it was during that year that I was there that I decided, that I wanted to go to school. My coaches were telling me, there were several places that offered, some sort of scholarship money to kind of come on and throw batting practice and be a student assistant. And so I chose LSU, which was one of the greatest decisions of my life. I loved my time there in Baton Rouge with Beth and Lindsay and Dobby and those guys, and just went and felt like family there. And while I was there, during my time there, I traveled with the women's national team. I was still training. So I tried out for the USA men's senior national team in January of 2019. So I was still kind of training for that. I was traveling with the women, throwing BP to them. And I was also coaching travel ball. And so that was kind of like, when I got there, I still had those like young gun dreams. Like I was going to be in the third base coach's box at the Women's College World Series in like 5 years, like that was what I thought. And then while I was there, I just kind of started to like, I was doing some pitching lessons. I was, discovering my love for doing that and helping youth athletes and coaching travel ball. And I coached a pretty high level travel ball team, Georgia Impact, with Patrick Lewis and Lincoln Martin and some of those guys, and was really loving that. And so actually it was my senior year of college before COVID hit. I had decided, that I was going to take a job with Georgia Impact in Atlanta. And I was going to go there and I was going to kind of do lessons and help with their club. And COVID hit, and that changed some things, like I left LSU, like kind of not the way I wanted to, it was like our sport administrator came in, I'll never forget. And she was like, you have to get all your stuff and leave as if you're never coming back. And I was like, what? Like I went and like cried in front of my locker with all my stuff for like hours. But I was and then COVID hit and I was going to take that job. But with COVID, they're like, we're not sure what's going to happen, like with our club. And so that was when I kind of opened up the door to college coaching, and Beth called me and she's like, hey, I have a lot of people calling me. And I want to know if I can throw your name in the pot. Like, are you seriously going to think about getting back in this? And most people don't know that. They don't know, that my original dream was not college coaching. My original, I guess. But then like what I was going to do post college was not college coaching. But, I had a couple people reach out and actually wound up getting offered a couple jobs and decided on Ole Miss with Jamie and Katie at the time. We really hit it off, and it was in the SEC, which was all that I'd ever known and was close to home. And it was a great job and a great opportunity. And so I took it, and that's how I wound up at Ole Miss.
And that's kind of when we initially met. And I think one of the interesting things, and maybe we'll get into this as we start talking about our journey, getting to know each other, is that we were sort of, as you were taking your journey to Ole Miss, I feel like that was when S2, now OGX, was starting to really get in our groove of who we were and what value we were going to add to the game. So I think our timing of when we met was really just lucky, sort of like the universe speaking out of guiding us to each other. But maybe just talk through a little bit about how you initially met us, reached out to us, like how we connected and you sort of stumbled upon us at the time.
Yeah, sure. So it actually kind of started during COVID. So during COVID, I was at my stepmom's beach house in Florida, and not a bad place to spend COVID. And my best friend, Erin Dixon, who's now at Georgia Tech, she was there with me. And we were kind of, getting on a bunch of different calls, during COVID of just like softball. We're learning, we're talking, everybody's, doing all kinds of stuff. And we were on a call, and Trisha Ford was on there. And I knew Trish a little bit prior to that, but she had said some things that I was just like, whoa, like I'm really interested. And so Erin and I kind of started talking to her, and she's like, you need to know these people, and so one of them was Ashley, and then she was telling me about you and Laura. And so she was just kind of like, I think you guys were kind of starting your relationship with her. You were kind of like just getting into college consulting just before that. And so she was telling me all about you guys, and she's like, you need to know them. So then we're like going down the rabbit hole on Twitter, right? Like we can't sleep. Like we're in the bedrooms across from each other at 3 a.m. sending each other stuff on Twitter.
God knows what was on Twitter from us at that time. So we've evolved a bit, but
it was good. It was good enough for us to be up till 3 a.m. So we were just like bouncing, and we're like all in the kitchen, like doing all this stuff. And we were just like kind of just like down the rabbit hole of it. And that was actually, kind of then was when Trish and I continued to talk. And I was kind of like, at that point, I was like not sure what I was going to do. It's like, am I going to go be a GA somewhere? Am I going to go back to LSU? Because like the way that I left there, I just didn't love that. And, and then I got the Ole Miss job, and I was like really just curious about you guys and what you're doing. So I reached out to, I believe it was you right away. Mm-hmm. You're the first person that I reached out to, and we kind of started to talk, and you're like, well, we're doing this whole like college assessment thing. We're getting it going. This is what we do. And I was like, let's go for it. I'm in. And so it was, my first year at Ole Miss was kind of like going back and forth with Ashley a little bit, just about some questions. And then I actually brought you guys in August of what would have been 2021. And it was one of those moments where you meet somebody. And I met Ashley, and I was like, I think our souls are like linking, like she would say that. My insides, like I feel it. And I just remember like just being like, just kind of like blown away by her. Like she was smart, and she was compassionate, and it was all the things. She was just like going for it. And I was like, this lady doing her job. This is like how I want to feel about like softball. And I just, I really love player development, and so I feel like as a coach, like that was a big thing for me. Like I wanted to make sure that like I was continuing to learn and grow and be able to develop my athletes that I had at Ole Miss at the time. And so we just struck up a friendship right there. And then I continued to meet you guys, you and Laura and Carly, and now Josh and Kay, and just kind of continued to develop relationships with everybody, and just really got along with you guys. And went from there of like, just kind of struck up a friendship, and then, here we are now.
Yeah. I think it's funny because like, when we have these relationships that are sort of ongoing with people, we see how their pitchers transform. And so I remember the second year that Ashley went to Ole Miss, and she called me, and obviously we had at that point sort of like developed a friendship with you, and we're following the team and stuff too. But she was like, wow, like just, what you had done with the pitchers. I think it's just like, we measure it. So we know when people are doing different things with the pitchers. And I think we just like not only were our personalities aligned, but also our interest in developing pitchers and your ability to do that at the college level as well. And to like take, we had heard oftentimes, well, I don't have time at the college level to make my pitchers better. And we saw you doing it. And I think for us too, that was also inspiring to see the things we believed in being done at the college level, which was really incredible and sort of drew us to you as well.
Yeah. I obviously have Ashley and all of you guys to thank a lot for that. And she took a lot of phone calls straight from the bullpen. Like I would just be calling her straight up from the bullpen or sending her video and doing stuff. But like, yeah, I just really feel like, when I got there, I walked into Ole Miss to a group of kids who hadn't thrown a lot. They were, there was two kids there, Savannah Dietrich and Anna Morgan, and Ava Tillman was there as well. And they were kind of the returners, and they just hadn't pitched a lot in their careers. Ava had thrown quite a bit the year before, but mostly midweeks, never competed at a high level in the SEC. And they were just kind of like, teach us, give us everything you got. Well, like, we'll do whatever. I remember Anna Morgan literally being like, I'll throw with my right arm if you want me to. And so I just was like, man, I got to do it for these kids. Like I got to get in and get into the nitty gritty of this. And so they worked their butts off. We worked really hard together, and Ashley was great to us, and you guys were great to us, just like pouring knowledge into us. And we just really, I feel like, dove in and took off. And then I just continued to see it. And like you said, it was measured, and there was no more guesswork. Like we were measuring what was actually going on, and we were seeing the improvements before our eyes, and we were coming back, and we were doing better on assessments, and our ball flight was getting better, and our velo was getting better, and we were staying healthy. And it was just like, I was like, this is it, this is the way. And it took a lot of time. I can see where coaches are like, oh, I don't have time for that. I think it can be, it's a tall task. And there were many times that Ashley looked at me and said something, and I was like, you want to try English? Like, I'm not following, like, woo, way over my head, And so I could see where it feels like a really tall task to some college coaches. And, but it was well worth it. And I wouldn't do it any other way. It was, the knowledge that she gave me, and, the development that those kids were able to put together there at Ole Miss was something really special.
Yeah. So with that said, obviously we always laugh because I often would say to you, like, Ryker, when are you going to move to Chicago? And, when are you going to work for us? And not that we do that with everyone, but we would joke about it quite often. And, as you were sort of getting to the point where you were maybe stepping away from college softball, I think once that got announced, people assumed that you were coming straight to OGX, and that we had sort of like swooped you out of college game, and that was how it worked. But it really wasn't how it ultimately happened, and sort of the path that it took. So maybe walk through how you ultimately ended up with us, and then we can talk through a little bit about what that looks like now.
Yeah. So I was just, college coaching is tough. It's tough. And I was just at a point where it was never my original, dream. Like I was leaving college, and I knew that it was not really what I wanted to do. And it's a tall task, and it is all consuming. It's very rewarding, but it requires a lot. And, I ultimately, what kept me there for the 3 years that I was there were the people, the people that I had the relationships with. And, Jamie did a lot for me there, and I had a great relationship with Katie and those athletes, those kids, like they hold a special place in my heart and always will. And that was the hardest part, was walking away from them. But I felt like I was kind of called to do this work, to be honest with you. Every conversation that Ashley and I had left my soul kind of feeling on fire. And I was just like, there's a lot of other pieces to the college game. That's where college coaches are like, I don't have time to dive into development, because like you have compliance and recruiting and, academics, and there's a whole world there. But I knew that every time, that the best part of my day was every day that I spent in the bullpen. The best part of my day was the development side. The best part of my day was talking to Ashley and diving in and having conversation. And I just kind of felt like it was a time, it was 3 years in there. There were some other changes going on. And I was just like, this is my opportunity. You guys were kind of taking off, and yeah, we had joked about it back and forth for sure. But you guys were kind of taking off, but it wasn't dead set. When I left, I wasn't like, I'm leaving for OGX. That's two, OGX. it wasn't like that. For me, it was a life thing. Like I needed something different, and I took my time. I think I took about 8 weeks. You and I and Ashley talked just a couple weeks after I had left Ole Miss, and kind of started a baseline of discussion. But I really, this move for me was about making sure that it was right for me, and making sure that where I landed was something that I was going to be really passionate and fulfilled in. And so it wasn't just a right off the cuff thing. It took some time, and I feel like I took my time, and we had some very thoughtful conversation, between the three of us. And I feel really good about my decision. Obviously, now I've been here for a couple of weeks, and I'm really, really happy. And I'm really, really excited about what's in front of us.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to this before, but I think one of the interesting things for us is that, our business was on a similar journey at the time. It was, we kind of almost, I think every employee that has worked for us has felt this version of a question of like, I love the game so much, or I love a part of the game so much, and where do I fit into it? And Ashley and I really went through that journey together for our first few years, because we came into it and did things kind of in a somewhat traditional route, and we're going to be the lessons, and, just followed this sort of path, and ultimately got to a place where like, this is not it for us, and had to do some real soul searching and kind of remake the business, and brought on Laura. And that was really when we intersected. So we were in this path of like kind of clarity of like, this is it. This is more of who we are and how we can contribute in a really positive way to the game. And so I think it was just, as I mentioned, like just fortuitous that we met each other at a path where you were kind of asking those same questions, and happened to like really align with us. But I think that's important for all coaches and athletes to really ask of themselves and feel like, you can give value in the game in a lot of different ways. And for us, this is like what sets our souls on fire, is watching kids develop and pouring into the athletes, and watching coaches develop and giving them information. And I think it impacts the game a lot, but it's just kind of where we all align.
Totally. And I think in that job, when I was at Ole Miss, I quickly realized like, hosting camps and recruiting and stuff, I was just like, just the lack of like actual good knowledge, not only from a pitching standpoint, but softball in general, hitting, defense, throwing, all of it. Just like, it was very prevalent to me. I was just like, man, there are so many kids, that are in that middle tier, that like they could be in that upper tier, and there's some kids in the lower tier that could be in the middle tier. And there's some kids who like may not even have a chance to play college softball that could get a chance, with like the right information and systems and development. And that was what really fired me up, and I had people like, it was not easy leaving that job, for myself, but I had people look at me and be like, what are you doing? You can't leave college coaching. I'm like, yes, I can, I think it's my choice, but it was not easy. I had some very, people that mean a lot to me and high profile people in our game be like, kind of, what are you doing? I think you're making a mistake. And I just think there's something about, being with your own knowing. And, I knew it was time. It had been on my mind for a little while. And I felt like, even though I had to make a really tough decision to walk away from some athletes in a place that I really, really cared about, and some kids that I really cared about, I knew that I was going to affect the game on a greater scale in this position. I knew that I was not only going to be able to bring, athletes really high level information, but I knew that I was going to continue to develop athletes, and I knew that I was going to continue to bring coaches high level information and help kids get recruited to the right place. And just like I talk about getting those kids to jump that tier, like I felt all those things, and that was what made me happy. Although like Ole Miss was a great job and those things are great, and competing in the SEC, man, and that feeling of getting in the arena and competing and winning is like, that's tough to replace. Like that's some really burning stuff. But I still knew that like, it's just like, this is cool, but like, is it right for me? And now I feel like, on the other side of this, like I said, I took my time to make my decision, and I feel like the decision that I'm in now, just in the little shorter time that I've been there, I feel those things. I feel the things that I thought I was going to feel. And I know that it's right.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, now let's talk about, here we are. Director of Pigeon Growth is the role. So what does the role look like? What's your sort of like hopes out of it? So like taking that passion and turning it where? What is the sort of like vision you have in this role going forward?
I want to get this information into the hands of as many athletes as I can get it into. Like I've seen it in my own system. It wasn't only that the kids that I had at Ole Miss were in the system. It was, the recruits, the kids that we were recruiting, kids that I had at camp. Like, I'm like, you should go here. You should go here. You should learn more about your story. It's like hashtag Ryker loves us too. OGX now. But it's like, I just am so passionate about it, and I know that it's the best information out there from a softball player development and pitching standpoint right now in our game. And I know that, it has given me the opportunity to, bring kids into this system. And also, like, I'm going to go out the same way that, you guys have been going on the road and doing assessments in college programs. I'm going to go on the road to travel ball tournaments, and I'm going to do, remote assessments there and talk about, what we do and how we train and why we do what we do, and continue to give kids glimpse into their own story. And I think for me, I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about the kid that shows up and is like, hey, like I'm a 2025. We are having this right now. I'm a 2025. I didn't get the calls that I wanted on September 1. These are what coaches say I need. All right, we'll get in here. Get an assessment. Let's get after it. Let's get you there. Let's get you where you need to be to get you where you want to go, to get you to the program that you want to go to play to the level that you want to play. And then we have younger kids, who are like, hey, I want to make sure, or we have kids that are 25 that are like, I'm committed, and I want to make sure that I'm
right.
busting my butt and I'm getting the right information so that I'm prepared to pitch in the SEC or wherever I'm going. And then we got some younger kids who they really have high hopes and dreams to play at big time Power 5 schools, and they're like, we want to make sure that we're getting the best training that we can, and we're ready for our September 1 call. We're ready for that fall or that summer that's going to get us recruited. We're really taking on that space. I'm really passionate about that, making sure that athletes that are with us and train with us, that we can pass along their story and their data to college coaches, and make sure that they're taken care of and winding up in a program that's going to take care of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all get fired up about that because we just see the flip of it so often in our game where, we often hear the phrase kind of like, I feel stuck. And I think that applies to a lot of different people, whether that's coaches who feel just like stuck with the information they have or stuck with a certain athlete, or injuries that are happening, whether it's an athlete who's sort of like had the journey she was wanted so far and she is recruited at the level she wants, but she feels stuck of like, I can't just go as this version of myself, or now I'm having pain, or now I'm having these things, or the athlete who's not having the version of the story she wants. And so how do I sort of take hold of that, or the athlete sort of like pre that? And I think all the versions of that, what sort of fires us up is this feeling of like, we were so used to the game just being like, well, sometimes you're just not good enough, or sometimes you get stuck, and that's what happens. And I think what fuels all of us is this, like, that can't be the end of the story. That can't be what we're telling people. And this passion to like really, grab their hand and sort of like run alongside them to make sure we're doing the best we can to get them out of that feeling.
Totally. What did Ashley say the other day? We are all the things. We are all the things, like people think it's just data in a lab. No, like we can give you a biomechanics assessment. We can also, help you with pitch design and pitch development. Like, we can also help you get recruited. We can also, if you're injured, we have protocols to help you through that. We have a great strength and conditioning coach. Like, we should have all the systems, and it's like, that's when people were asking me, like, are you going to go do your own thing? Like, why don't you go do your own pitching thing? Like, you'll get the clientele, like you're good enough. And I'm like, it's not about whether I'm good enough or not. It's about what OGX is and the people. It's about the team, it's about the pack, and like the strength is in the pack of like, it's all of us, and like you, if you sign up with us, you get a Slack channel. Everybody's in there. Like, we're all rooting for you. Right. And, that's what I love about, just being around in the facility the last couple of weeks is like, it's so athlete centered, mom and dad are involved, and they're there and those things, but it's like, it's athlete driven and it's athlete centered, and you have kids showing up who know their data, who know their stuff, who are filling out their wellness questionnaire, who are just like really on top of their game. And it's cool to see. It's really cool to see. And I know, from somebody who's been on the other side in a college environment, like, those kids are going to make it and they're going to translate. And I know that, and I believe in that. And it's why, again, just another reason why I just continue to believe in the system and what you guys do and what you built.
Bam. Well, ends there. Yeah. So we are super pumped. It's obviously already, I think we're feeling all pretty fired up about the direction it's going. And so I'm sure that you'll be back on at some point in a few weeks to kind of talk about the next steps. But we wanted to give everyone a little intro into our newest staff member at OGX.
Thanks for having me, Krista.
Thanks for joining another episode of the Bet on Me podcast. Go out today, bet on yourself, and remember, when you bet on yourself, you can't lose.